Okay, welcome back. So this is review 5, your cumulative review for lessons 22 through 25. Again, I assume that you've been through all the guided notes for those lessons and you're ready to do this rehearsal. Think of this as, we're doing a test prep together, and then after that, like I said, you can do your self-assessment on iTunes U and grade yourself. So this is our rehearsal. Let's dive in. Round the decimal to the nearest tenth. Now you see I give you a hint here. Whenever you're doing rounding decimals, it's good to do the place value chart. And I'm actually going to place the number in here, 0.45. So you see the 4 is in the 10th spot and the 5 is in the 100th spot. So if I need to round to the nearest tenth, what I'm going to do is I'm going to go to the 10th spot, look next to it, and remember if this number is 5 or higher, which it is, then this is going to round up. So it's going to round. So long story short, if this number is 5 or higher, this is going to go up to 0.5, and then you follow behind it with the 0. So you can say, 0.50, but 0.50 means the same thing as 0.5. So again, I'll just make a little note to self, 5 or higher, round up. Okay. And again, I'm going to kind of cruise through this with ease because I'm assuming you've been through it in the guided notes already. So, number 2. It says to solve this equation. And again, we have the answers pasted over there. We just want to see how to get them. So we're going to distribute. So we have 4x plus, and 4 times 1.91. The lazy part of me is tempted to use the calculator, but again, we're rehearsing these things without a calculator. So go off on the margin. I always say go off on the margin. Don't mess up the flow of your equation. 1.91 times 4. I'm going to go off on the margin somewhere and do that. Remember, you ignore the decimal and do that later. So 9 times 4 is 36. Put the 6, carry the 3. 4 times 1 is 4, plus 3 is 7. And then count 1, 2, 2 digits behind the decimal point. So 1, 2, 2 digits behind the decimal point. Okay? So 7.64, I'm going to record that, equals 3x. So, all of this sort of marginal work here where I was multiplying, I just keep that off on the side. Now remember, we had talked about letters on the left, numbers on the right. So I would like to take 3x and bring it to the left of the equal sign, toss it across the equal sign, but I have to obviously negate it, subtract it off. So balancing an equation, we're good at that by now, right? So 4 minus 3, that's 1. So now I have 1x plus 7.64 equals, this is just zilch, 0, right? But now, letter, number, I need to chuck 7.64 across the equal sign, but I can't just do that. I have to negate it, right? The add-up property of equality says I'm going to subtract 7.64 from both sides of the equation. So now I have 1x equals, well, 0 minus 7.64 is just negative 7.64, and voila! X equals negative 7.64, which is the final answer. Okay, let's head to the next slide, moving right along. Guess I'll scoot that over there. Another solve the equation type scenario. Letter, number. I want to bring the numbers to the right, so I'm going to subtract off 6.94. And then I'll have 7.7y equals whatever negative 69.29 minus 6.94 is. And again, I would think of money here. If you have a loss of 69 and some change, and then a loss of $6.94, you have an overall loss, so you have to combine those two numbers. So I'm going to just kind of go off on the side and say, okay, what's 69.29 and 6.94 added together? So I'm going to combine those two losses and know that it's just an overall loss. So okay, so that'll bring me to negative 76.23. And then right at the end, I want to isolate y, so I'm going to have to divide by 7.7. Again, I know it's tempting to use a calculator, but don't do it. Make sure you're comfortable doing these operations by hand. I'm going to erase my margin work here. And now I have to figure on what's, 76.23 divided by 7.7. I know that a negative divided by a positive is a negative. So I'm going to go off on the side here, do some decimal division now. Slide one, and line up the decimal. So 77 doesn't go into 76, but perhaps it goes into 762, perhaps maybe about 9 times. And you do some guesstimation, but remember you're going to come back around and multiply. So like 9 times 7, 63, put the 3 down, carry the 6. 9 times 7, 63 plus 6, 69. Draw the line and subtract. I'm going to have to do some borrowing here. So this will become a 15. This will eventually become a 12. And you can bring down this last guy. And then, hey, 7.693, that's nice. So 7.7, we know it's going to go 9 times. And again, that's just happened to work out nice and pretty there, which most of these are engineered to do. So we're getting that 9.9 as our quotient, but we know that a negative divided by a positive is a negative. So notice the answer is negative 9.9. So final answer, y equals negative 9.9. Okay, hope that helps. Moving right along. Now we have to write this fraction as a decimal. So we're going to take 40. Remember, take the bottom into the top, denominator into the numerator. So we're going to take 40 into 17. Write it as 17.0. 40 doesn't go into 17. Line up the decimal. But it does go into 170. And you say, there's where you do some guesstimation. You say, well, maybe about 4 times. 4 times 0 is 0. 4 times 4 is 16. And then you can bring down these trailing zeros, they don't affect it. So now 40 into 100, you say maybe about twice, because 2 times 40 is 80. Now remember, every decimal you keep going, because either it's going to terminate or repeat, one of the two. Well, that's 20, and I can bring down a trailing 0. Now, 40 into 200 goes perfectly 5 times. And that's why I say it's going to there's where it terminates. Remainder 0. So 0.425, voila, 0.425. Okay, let's try the next one. Insert less than, greater than, or equal to make a true statement. Well, the thing is, when you're comparing a fraction to a decimal, best thing to do is turn them both into decimals. So turn frac into decimal. Just giving you kind of a general recipe there. All right, so to do that, I'm going to have to take 97 into 41. 41.0, of course. So you say, well, 97 into 4, I'll line up the decimal, into 410 goes about, you say, okay, maybe 4 times. Try it out. 4 times 7 is 28, carry the 2. 4 times 9, 36, 37, 38. So let's try that. Draw the line and subtract. Going to have to do some borrowing there. and bring down a trailing 0. Now we say, okay, 97 into 220, maybe about twice. 2 times 7, and I'll scratch that old one out. 2 times 7, 14, carry the 1. 2 times 9, 18, plus 1, 19. Draw the line and subtract. And we do some borrowing here. You can bring down a trailing 0. Continue this until you get that decimal by decimal comparison. 97 into 260 then, we say maybe about 2 times again, because we know now that 2 times 97 is a 194. Do some borrowing there. Oops, I meant 15. And that's going to be 6. Bring down a trailing 0, and so on and so forth. Now, but the thing is, now we can see as soon as, so let me just grab this part of the quotient. Right away we can start to see. So right away we're comparing 0.42 to something, despite what the next decimal is, versus, remember the other one, 0.425. So as soon as you get a different decimal, let me just show you that, 0.425 repeater. What I'm getting at is tenths, the same. Hundredths, the same. Thousandths, thousands. When you get to the thousandth spot, this number here, it's already smaller than this number. So guess what? Less than. That's why the answer is less than. Okay? So as soon as you see that decimal is smaller than, or that value 2 is smaller than the value 5, boom, you know it's less than. All right, hope that helps. Again here we just have some decimal division. I'm just going to remind you of the mechanics of that. So 0.25 into 13.109. Remember that when your divisor is a decimal, you're going to have to slide 2, zoop, and then line up. So make sure your decimal's right there. So then you're really kind of looking at 25 going into that number. So does 25 go into 13? No. Does 25 go into 131? Yeah, perhaps about 5 times. We know that 5 times 25 is 125. Draw the line and subtract. And this will become an 11. So we have, okay, 6. Bring down the next guy. Does 25 go into 60? Yeah, about twice. 2 times 25 we know is 50. Draw the line and subtract. Bring down this last guy. Does 25 go into 109? Yeah, about 4 times. 4 times 25 we know is 100. Now you say, now what do I do? Well, remember, you can keep bringing down those trailing zeros one by one until you get a terminating or repeating decimal. So does 25 go into 90? Yeah, about 3 times. And you know it doesn't go in 4 times. 25 times 4 is 100, so you've surpassed it. So 3 times 0.25, or 3 times 25 is 75. Notice I'm, once I've placed that decimal there, I'm kind of ignoring, I've dealt with the decimal and I'm just focusing in on the numbers. That's what I can say. 90 minus 75, 15. And you can bring down another, trailing 0. And then 25 into 150, whew, is going to go perfectly 6 times. And big note to self, you'll know that you have a terminating decimal. Okay, so that goes in perfectly. And trying to get my pen to act right here. And voila, we had ourselves a terminating decimal. So 52.436, and of course I have the answer pasted in. All right, let's go to the next one. This is a good old-fashioned multiplication of decimals. I'm going to rewrite the problem. 9.5 just so I can, better see it in my own handwriting. Remember, the rules of the game is to ignore the decimals and count them up at the end when you're multiplying. So 5 times 9, 45, carry the 4. 9 times 9, 81, plus 4 is 85. Put 0 here as your placeholder. 0 times 5, 0. 0 times 9, 0. Okay, so there we end up with 8, 5, 5. I've totally ignored the decimals, but then I'm going to count the total digits. I'm just writing that. Total digits behind the decimal is obviously 2. 1, 2. So guess what? 1, 2, boom. And that's how we're arriving at 8.55. All right. Hope that helps. Write the decimal in standard form. This is especially awkward for someone that has English as a second language, and I have a lot of students that have English as a second language. So let's read it. 61 ten thousandths. Well, the big thing is right here, 10 thousandths, 10 thousandths. That's your place value. And so the big thing is lay out the place value chart. That's what's really going to help you. Lay it out. Boom, boom, boom. Tenths, hundredths, thousandths, 10 thousandths. Make sure you lay out that place value chart, and that'll tell you, where those where to place those digits. So when you say 61 10 thousandths, 61. See, the 1 has to land in the 10 thousandths spot. And what goes here? Placeholders. So zeros. So 0.0061, voila. So the big thing is look out for the place value and lay it out. So I remind you just real quick, tenths, hundredths, thousandths, and then of course 10,000. So you've got to land on that 10,000 spot. All right, next. Find the value of the following expression. Give the result as a decimal. Well, this is just number crunching. So loss of 9.2, loss of 6.4. Think of money. If I lose $9.20 and then I lose another 6.4, I'm going to be in the hole. So what I would do is just add their absolute values. So just kind of add those two numbers together. So it's going to bring us to 1560, but you're in the hole. So let's say negative 15.6. And then this business with times 1/4. So you have two options. You can, 1/4 means 0.25. So you could multiply this by 0.25. Or 1/4 of something means that thing divided by 4. So you could go and take 4 into 15.6. 4 goes into 15 about 3 times. Line up the decimal, of course. 4 goes into 36 9 times, and voila. So let's just carry that out. But a positive times a negative is a negative, so we know it's going to end up, always keep track of the signs. So negative 3.9. All right, hope that helps. But remember, if you really love to, I think 1/4 times this, I think it's easier to just divide 4 into that to get the answer here. An alternative would be to take 0.25 times that. Okay? Try the next one. Write a fraction as a decimal. We've done that before, but again, you're going to divide the bottom into the top. It's always the bottom into the top, the denominator into the numerator. So 5 goes into 12 about twice. Line up the decimal. And 5 goes into 20 about 4 times. 4 times. And that terminates, and 2.4, 2.4. Okay, let's head to the next one. Circumference is this word that we're going to come across, especially in the tail end of the course in the geometry section. First, we grab our formula for circumference, which is pi d, pi times diameter. I remind you that this is the radius, and so therefore diameter is twice the radius. So whatever 2 times 8.8 is, that's actually your diameter. So perhaps even we should go off on the side and figure out what that is on the margin here. So 8.8 times 2. So 17.6. So circumference then is pi, which we're approximating with 3.14, times the diameter. And I remind you that circumference is going to be, this is yards, so it's going to be in yards. So circumference is, and again, that's approximately because we're using a decimal approximation for pi. So we just have to figure out what 3.14 times 17.6 is, and that is just good old-fashioned decimal multiplication. Now, for time's sake, I don't want this podcast to be too long. I'll let you play with that, but you should arrive at 55.264, and I'll let you play with the decimal multiplication there, but we'll check it on the calculator. 3.14 times 17.6, 55.264. But I will make a side note. If you are going to multiply this out by hand, I would just make a note. 3.14, 17.6. Remember that you completely ignore the decimals and count them up at the end. So in fact, you might just want to take, there's going to be 1, 2, 3 digits behind the decimal. So you might just want to focus on taking 314 times 176 and completely ignore the decimals until the end, and know that there's going to be 3 behind. I'm just going to write option. Okay, let you take it from there. Again, this one is just practice with decimal operations. Negative 2.3 minus negative 8.9, you've got that double negative there, which becomes a positive, so negative 2.3 plus 8.9. And from there, just think of money, loss. So if you lose $2.30 and then you gain $8.90, you're to the good, but you're looking for, what really ends up happening is you're looking for the difference of that money, if you're thinking about it as money. So 6.6. So you'd be to the good 6.6. So a lot of people say subtract these two values and answer takes the sign of the larger number, which is the case. Okay. Let's try the next one. This is just rounding. Remember, we only have 17 problems, so we're almost there, guys. To the nearest thousandth. So I'm just going to rewrite it and talk place value. Tenths, hundredths, thousandths, thousandths. So I go to the thousandth spot, look next to it. Since that number is lower than 5, this stays at an 8. So 0.358, and he fills in with a 0, which is what we have. So again, I'm just going to write a note. Since lower than 5. This stays at an 8, and this becomes a 0. Okay? Head to the next one. Good old solving equations again. We just can't get enough practice with that, especially without a calculator. So that's a 3x, distribute, whatever 2.51 times 3 is. And like I said, I just go off on the side and figure out what that is. So 7.53. So plus 7.53 equals 2x. I know we become, in the real world, we become so dependent on calculators and computers, it almost feels awkward to do this by hand. So I'm going to minus 2x, minus 2x. So now I have 1x plus 7.53 equals 0. And like I said, just move 7.53 to the other side of the equal sign by subtracting it off. And then you have x equals negative 7.53, which matches our answer key. Okay, moving right along. A landscape architect is planning a border for a flower garden shaped like a triangle. The sides, and honestly, as soon as I see the word triangle, I usually try to make some kind of sketch. So you have side lengths measuring 16.28, 10.11, and 28.64 feet. Find the amount of border material needed. See, it doesn't blatantly tell us whether to add or whatnot, but all of that is a key word for perimeter. So when you say border material needed, that's really triggering us for perimeter, which we know now is a trigger word for add the side lengths. So all right, so we just have to figure out what 16.28 plus 10.11 plus 28.64. Especially if you have English as a second language, you just got to be on the lookout for key words. Border, fencing, perimeter, all of those things are keywords for addition. So 8, 9, this is going to bring us to 13, carry the 1, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, carry the 1, and voila, 55.03 feet needed. So remember, perimeter is plain old units, feet. Okay, and number 16, almost at home base here, guys, just a little bit more, is compare these two decimals. We'll do a digit by digit comparison. Same, 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 same. Aha! When you get to the 10th spot, they differ. Well, hey, 6 is bigger than 3, so guess what? Greater than. So as soon as they differ at the 10th spot, you know that 6 is larger than 3. And even if you think about money, $160 and let's say 63 cents is more than $160 and let's say 32 cents. You know what I mean? So you know it's bigger than. Just do a decimal by decimal comparison. And last but not least, write this decimal as a fraction or mixed number in lowest terms. Well, remember to do that, you think about place value. So tenths, hundredths, thousandths. So you would say 8 and 4 thousandths, and you would write it that way. 8 and 4 thousandths. But the thing is, 4 thousandths reduces. And guess what it reduces to? 1 out of 250. So if you divide by 4, divide by 4, 4 divided by 4 is 1, 1,000 divided by 4 is 250, and voila. Okay. Hope that helps. I know that was a long review, but you can always fast forward to areas that you know you need answers. All right, good luck out there, everyone.